Well, thank you to all of you who have joined us for this webinar. We feel that it's another opportunity for you to hear from the school how we are planning to reopen, and also to hear from you what your concerns and questions are. I would like to start with a prayer, and the prayer I'm going to use is from a book called Prayers for the Journey, Students' Prayers. A while ago, two faculty members at St. Xavier High School put together a prayer book, and they compiled prayers from all over the Jesuit assistancy of high school students. And I thought with all that's going on in our world, this prayer is particularly important. And it's just entitled, Peace Is. So let us pray. Peace is a handshake of understanding, an overture of diplomacy, a compromise of society, a finale to suffering, a plea for harmony, a chance for forgiveness, a truce of generosity, an end to animosity, an outburst of courage, a shadow of patience, a treaty of recognition, a stop to hatred, an occasion to rejoice, an option to believe in, a decision to trust one's enemies, an agreement to break barriers, an accord of serenity, a choice to live by one's faith, an appeal to accept differences, a conclusion to battle, an introduction to acceptance, a grateful display of diversity, an offer to disarm, an approach to greater strength, a show of self-confidence, an act of bravery, a reconciliation of violence, a disappearance of war, a performance of silence, a call to exiles, a return to friendship, an outstretched hand, a reason for hope, a shoulder of reliance, an assistance to those in need, a banishment of persecution, a guidance to refugees, an effect of loyalty, an uprooting of terror, a promise to live in safety, a shining star in a dark sky, a direction for the lost ones, a leader for the unguided, a story of success, a time for joy and happiness, and peace is also an opportunity to find love in the world. Amen. Joining Mr. VanSlambrook and myself this morning is Dr. Marla Doehring, and I ask her to introduce herself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marla Doehring. I'm an emergency medicine physician. I work here locally at Eskenazi Hospital where I care for patients. I also have the privilege of teaching medical students and supervising residents. I'm also a mom. So my husband and I are parents of a 2018 Brebeuf grad. We also have a current Brebeuf student. And today I'm here representing the Medical Task Force, which is just a group of professionals that have volunteered their time and expertise to be a resource for the Brebeuf administration as it moves towards reopening.
Thank you, Marla. Greg, Mr. VanSlambrook, our principal.
Welcome and good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for your time, and just want to thank all of you in our community for going down this journey with us and entrusting us with these plans for reopening and for the education of all our kids. We are just working really hard and thoughtfully to try to get a good plan together that will bring people back together, to get all the benefits of being back together as a community, educational and social and interpersonal, spiritual, while still minimizing risk, and navigating this landscape that all society is with reopening. So that's the way we see it, and it's a evolving landscape, as you all know. I'm really grateful for Dr. Doehring, for everybody on that medical task force, and for everybody in the community who's played a part in this. It's been a big team effort. So today I'll focus my short presentation here on our campus reopening plan, which was emailed to everyone 2 days ago, I believe, on Tuesday. And then yesterday there was a link that went out for pre-submission of questions. So we've received a number of questions pre-submitted, and I'll tackle many of those after the presentation. And then there's also a question and answer feature in the Zoom here, and just encourage you to go ahead and start filling in questions as I go, anytime. And again, when we get to the question and answer portion, I'll moderate the questions, and then any of the three of us, Father Bill or Dr. Doehring or myself, will be taking those questions. We'll take, like we did last time, no more than an hour. We'll wrap up when we're done, or at 12, whichever comes first. So again, appreciate you all being here with us. And what you're seeing in front of you, Father Bill, you could confirm this for me, is the campus reopening plan on our website, right? Great. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute. If you haven't already read that, or haven't already seen that, I would encourage you to pull that up on your screen at brebeuf.org/reopening on the side while we're doing this. I'll be going through some aspects of that. I don't have time to go through it in 100% detail for obvious reasons, but I'm going to do my best to hit some highlights that I think everybody needs to know and focus on. And before I get back to that website, I've got a few slides here just for review. We did this a few weeks ago, and these are a few of the same things that I said at that time. These are the teams that we have working hard on this plan. This is our timeline right now. There's just a few offices in the Brebeuf building open right now. We have summer school going online. I'm grateful for all those students and teachers who have been doing successful online summer school for the last week and a half. We've been pleased with how that's gone. July 6th, 2.5 weeks from now, is the first day that campus reopens for summer school classes and for athletics. And so that's a big date coming up. We've still got freshman study skills workshop happening at the beginning of August, and we're still in line with our campus calendar that we've had for a while now. We haven't changed any major dates around the start of school or breaks or things like that. So we're still on track for new student orientation being Wednesday, August 12th, and the first day of school being Thursday, August 13th. These are the same as what they were last time I presented, but it's good to review because you'll see how the reopening document utilizes these principles. The first one for a successful reopening is making sure that people don't come into school sick, and that people are able to stay home, have every incentive to stay home if they're any higher risk factor, including being sick. Number two, that when we're at school, we'll have precautions, distancing measures, program adjustments to try to minimize risk when we're in the building for everybody. And number three, have clear plans and procedures in place for if somebody in our community were to test positive for COVID once we reopen, how we manage that, communicate about that, and deal with it. So to have a plan in place for that, and you'll see that in the reopening plans as well. And then number four, our education and training, what we're doing right now is a part of that, as well as a lot of training for faculty and staff in the building in the coming weeks, getting ready for reopening too. So as I mentioned, the plan is now online at brebeuf.org/reopening. As any adjustments are made to the plan, which I expect will happen, you can keep coming back to this website. It'll be a landing place for reopening plans. What we have in this plan now is, especially with July in mind, and it's, some things are a lot more uncertain for August, but it also has August in mind. So as you'll see as I go through it, the very specific July procedures are in red font. But everything else that's in there, the topics that are addressed in this reopening plan will probably still be valid, and a lot of those things will probably still be in place in August, we would expect at this point. Again, still uncertainties and still things could change, but I hope this gives you a decent sense, at least, of what to expect when you're thinking about what's going to happen when we come back to school in August. And again, through this hour, we'll give you the best idea of that we can with the time that we have. There is a feedback survey. If you haven't seen this yet, you got it in your email yesterday with the link to this this meeting that you're in right now, there was also a link to a survey that we encourage everybody to fill out. I've had good responses on those so far. And if you haven't done that yet, it was the place to pre-submit questions, but it also is just it asks, I think, 5 or 6 quick questions on just some gauging people's responses and level of comfort with a few scenarios. Give us some information about what you're thinking on this, help us with our planning, and then just an open-ended, any other kind of thoughts or concerns that you have, there's a room for that too. We've established a new email address that's kind of a catch-all for topics around this. If you don't know who to email about any reopening questions, you can use reopening@brebeuf.org, and it'll go to the right place. So that is an email that's available to everybody. I think there's a link to that in the materials that you'll see, or on the website you'll see here in a minute. So now I'm going to go to the reopening plan itself and focus on this and hit a few highlights here before I get to the questions that have come through. So in section 1, it goes along with that first principle I mentioned. The most important thing that we can do for the safety of our community is for everybody to know that you need to stay home when you're sick. In schools, this is a huge mindset change. Schools, teachers, students for forever have said how important it is to be in class as much as possible, to be in school, to not miss class. And we all want to be back, and we want everybody back as much as possible, but it's also a mindset change that is, if there's any risk that you are bringing any sickness into the building, we need to have every incentive for you to stay home and to know that that's the right thing to do, and you'll still be able to participate in class from home. So that's how we've tried to organize this plan. That's what first, the screening protocol is about. So the way that the screening will work, I'm still working out the exact details of the tool that you'll use. But the idea is that before you leave the house every day, you'll go through a self-screening with several questions that you'll answer. And if you're not seeing any conditions that are associated with COVID, haven't been in any close contact with people who are positive or suspected, and not returning from travel as defined by the CDC, those things are true, then you come in. We're working right now with Ascension St. Vincent to get on board with an app that they use for their employees, and I expect that'll be ready for August, possibly for July as well, but we'll see. That would be a convenient way to do it, and so that's the way we're moving on that, is that every student would open up an app, answer some questions, then that guides them, yes, you can come to school today, and as they come into school today, there's a results screen that pops up, and they'd hold that up along with showing us their ID when they come in the gym lobby each morning. That's what we're planning at this time. The specifics of the screening tool we're still developing, and we will get out to everybody who's in summer school before summer school starts on July 6th of how exactly that'll work. And then we still have, before August 13th, again, time to have the specifics in place. So you'll receive more information about exactly how to do the screening, but that just explains a little bit about why we're doing the screening and how it will work. It'll be an expectation of all students, employees every day to do a self-screen and to be ready to show that you've done your self-screen when you enter the building. If you don't have a phone, or if you forget it or whatever, we'll still have a backup for when you hit the gym lobby as a student. You'll have a paper screening process that you can do. So there'll be screening one way or the other, but we hope to have a convenient way for you to do it from home with an app. Second, on participation in class from home, also really important to be able to set up the ability for people to stay home when they need to stay home, whether that's because they're sick or because they are might have been just needing to monitor for symptoms, or just are in a situation where they're not comfortable coming to school yet. So we're hoping to establish a really strong home learning opportunity for everybody who's in that situation. And this just gives the broad strokes of it in the plan, but I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're hoping for. We're currently equipping classrooms to try to be able to stream class to students at home. And so the thinking behind this is what we really think will be best is to be able to keep kids feeling like they're still a part of their classes, even when they have to be home. Not that they have just like an internet assignment to do, but that they will be able to be part of their classes and have regular access to their teachers. We heard from all of you from the spring e-learning experience that kids' regular contact with their teachers and the face-to-face opportunity to be kind of live on screen was definitely preferable as much as possible. And we think one great way for that to be able to happen is, say that you're missing a day, you can still pipe into your science class, the lecture that's happening that day, to actually be able to ask live questions from home and to hear the questions of your classmates to hear everything that goes on in class during that day. So that's what we're trying to prepare. We are hoping to have some of that ready, if not all of it, for the July summer school classes even, and to be able to test it out there and to perfect it. But that's the way we're thinking with our home learning platform, is to try to be able to have students participate live in the in-school classroom when they're at home. And I'm thankful for our IT team and our academic leadership and all of our teachers who are trying to prepare plans for that. It's a big change, and it's a big effort, but I think that is going to be the best way to enable people to stay home when they're sick and when they need to, and still feel like they're able to get the full, as full as possible to the educational experience that you want as a Brebeuf student. When you need to stay home through that self-screening app, or whether you just call us and say we're staying home, we'll give you plenty of guidance that'll be based on the medical advice that's out there about when you should return to school, when you need to go see your doctor, when you need to get tested. We'll give you plenty of guidance on that. So that will be a part of the process of, just regular kind of attendance reporting, absence, and things like that. You'll be guided by us, as well as, and we'll be guided by medical professionals and sending you to medical professionals if needed for that guidance on returning to school. Part 2 of this plan is how in the building we're going to take steps to reduce risk of transmitting the virus while students are here in school. And so number 1 on this is face masks, masking in the building. So as you see on here, currently we have a school policy that anytime anybody's in the building and not in a private office, which is where Father Bill and I are right now, then we would have, then it's a requirement to wear masks. That's going to be the case for sure in July summer school. Students are going to be in masks whenever they're in the building, including in class, and teachers are going to be wearing masks whenever they're in the building, including when they're teaching. And obviously that is a big adjustment. I know people have a lot of thoughts and worries in some case about how that's going to work. And it's definitely going to be different. And there's some limitations to that, but it also, we think, is very clear from the medical advice that we're getting that that is a huge way of reducing virus transmission risk while you're inside, and in closer proximity to each other, is to have masks on at all times inside. So that's what we're going to be doing in July. And there was one question that came in: do you expect that still to be the case in August? I can say I don't know 100%, but from the way that things are proceeding, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's still the case in August. So we'll see. Can't make any plans definite for that yet, but that's what I would bet on. If I had to say today, I would say I bet we'll all still be in masks in August in some way, shape, or form. But we definitely will in July when you're inside. Outside, different story. So when you're in PE, if you're a student in July PE summer school, they're going to have you outside 100% of the time if possible, or close to it. Obviously, there's rain plans for when they need to come into the building, but PE and athletics are going to be held outside in July. We're taking advantage of the whole campus. And so when they're outside, you won't need to have a mask on at all times, but inside they will. There's a lot of things that we can do to increase safety and physical distancing in the building. And this is an ever-evolving landscape, but this bullet points gives you a sense of some of those things. Desk arrangements in the classroom is something we're looking at real carefully. In summer school in July, for the first chances we have to be in class, there's a really small number of in-school classes, and there's a small number of kids in them. So we're able to keep a lot of distance in between the desks in summer school. Even when we're back in regular school, we'll be looking at things like arranging the desks all facing forward, keeping as much distance between the desks as possible. Again, with everybody still being in masks, those are all things in the classroom we can do to mitigate virus risk transmission. Then the trickier part probably is movement around the building. So, if you've ever been in high school, you all have, in passing periods in the hallways and common spaces like the library and cafeteria, it's not possible to keep 6 feet between people. So I think everybody needs to be clear-eyed about that. That's one of the reasons that masks are required at all times. And I think we just need to be talking to students about that all the time. So how do we work in this environment? And I think we're all experiencing it in things like grocery stores and other places that we go. How do we take precautions to keep an appropriate amount of distance between others while you're in busy places? So we can deal with some things like enforcing reduced capacity in some common areas. We will try to stagger the schedule times a little bit to have movement, to kind of keep movement flow from bunching up in different places. We'll be working on all those things, and it'll be a kind of trial and error, I think, as school starts. But we will be definitely focused on reducing congestion and trying to keep people as distant as possible around the building. We'll also be utilizing the outdoors as much as weather will allow. So I'd expect that to be the case in regular classes as well as what I've talked about in PE. And then there's lots of activities in the classroom that teachers are already working to adapt, things like science labs and art classes. And how do you do those things while keeping kids appropriately distanced from each other? There's a lot of adaptations that are happening to curriculum that are helping for that to take place. So I think we'll, one of the reasons that we are looking forward to July, for instance, for July in-person digital citizenship for our incoming freshmen, that's usually a class where there'd be some real hands-on group work with some hands-on projects that are being adapted right now or changed or replaced with something else. So we're thinking about that on a case-by-case, class-by-class basis. And in July, our freshmen will be in that environment where they will be not doing as many close-in hands-on activities. They'll still be in the same class together. They'll have masks on and they'll be doing appropriate activities where they're working in groups at an appropriate distance. That's how we'll be approaching that throughout the school. School will obviously be going through extra cleaning. We'll be thinking closely about ventilation, what we're learning about ventilation of indoor areas. And of course, weather allowing will help for that too. But extra cleaning supplies, our facilities team has been great about collecting a lot of cleaning supplies and working hard on that. We've already got a lot of them around here. Personal hygiene is something that will be emphasized and directed to students on a very regular basis about frequent hand washing, lots of hand sanitizer all over the place, talking about avoiding touching your face, really educating people about how the virus is transmitted and how to take your personal steps of hygiene to reduce the likelihood of that. Food and cafeteria service. In July, it's going to be simple. There is no cafeteria service in July. Students will need to bring whatever they want to eat when they're here that day, and they'll be doing it outside. The eating will happen outside in July, and our numbers are small enough that we can make that happen. And we can have backup plans for inside if it's a rain situation in large spaces with a small number of students. Once the school year starts, it'll be more complicated for sure, but we'll be taking real thoughtful steps with our food service folks about making it as safe as possible with grab and go items only instead of reaching in and sharing things, with spacing in the cafeteria, with schedules for that. I'd expect us to have a full plan for cafeteria and food service for the fall by the next time we have one of these Q&As. For right now, for July, again, keeping it simple, anything that's going to be eaten during the day needs to be brought yourself, and they're going to be directed on where they can do that, which is going to be outside, not inside. Of course, drinks during the day. Every student should bring their own water bottle, and there will be water bottle filling stations, which are safe, not the regular drinking fountains where you stick your face down to, but you'll have the ability to refill your water bottles during the day safely, and everybody should bring a water bottle each day. Drop off and pick up during the summer, I think is going to be very similar to usual for those of you who've been through it before. Drop off and pick up at the gym lobby entrance, line of cars forming. We'll have people out there directing you every day. And those people who are directing will also be able to reduce students bunching together. And with our numbers during summer school, I think, again, that's not going to be a problem. So on drop off and pick up, just continue to think about the same way you have before. You're going to just pull your car up, you're going to be directed, you're going to let your student out, they're going to come through the gym lobby, they're going to show their self-screen, and then they're going to come in, and we're going to keep students from bunching up there. When they're waiting around after school, we'll ask them to stay outside and keep appropriate distance, not to be congregating in the gym lobby on the inside. And so we can work with that in July. There's no assemblies in July, so that's not an issue. Our visitor policy, I think we want to minimize any unnecessary visitors, but I don't think there's really a lot of unnecessary visitors around a school during the day. Basically just reiterating our policies that you have, that we have an appointment when you come for a visit. It's for a purpose, it's for a planned time. There'll be a faculty staff member who will come out to greet you if you're a visitor, and we'll get you where you need to go. You'll have to follow all building policies. If we're still in masks, you'll need to be too, and we'll have disposable masks available for anybody who needs them when they enter. So yeah, minimizing visitors is definitely helpful, but we'll still be able to take visitors on an appointment basis and with appropriate guidance by a faculty staff member once we open back up on July 6th. And then part 3, what are our plans if and when there's a positive case within the community? And the basic foundation of this is we're going to get a lot of support from health officials if and when this happens, but we can also predict some ways that that's going to look. But we will always just be immediately in contact if this happens with the Marion County Public Health Department and getting guidance from them about how to proceed as a school in a number of ways, through contact tracing that they expect to do, through contact tracing that we can do as a school in terms of who the student has been in close proximity with that we know of around the building, which we will do a procedure for contact tracing that is our own, that we can reach out to people who, with appropriate privacy, for people who have been in close contact with that student, teams and so on, that they'll know and that they'll receive appropriate instruction on what they need to do to monitor themselves. And then as far as what the school needs to do to clean and possibly close for a time if that happens, we will follow Marion County Public Health Department guidance on that, exercise all the caution that we need to, communicate in the appropriate ways transparently with everybody. And I think we all need to be prepared that this could happen. And one of the survey questions kind of gets at that a little bit, to have you start thinking about that. What would you do if informed that there was somebody in the building who had tested positive? What are the ways that we'll all need to react to that and to keep everybody safe? So we'll be prepared for that. This is the basic plan for it. And if and when it happens, we will definitely respect both privacy and the health and safety of everybody in the community and be as transparent about it as we can too. Section 4 is all about athletics, and I'm thankful for Ted Hampton, Jake Weinstein, Todd Howard, everybody who's put together, all of our coaches who've put together great procedures for safe athletics return. So many of us, I think, have our kids are already experiencing this in athletics now that they've reopened in June. So you've seen a little bit about how that works. I think at Brebeuf we'll have a lot of really smart ways of, again, mitigating risk for athletes who are on campus. The Department of Education and the IHSAA have set out a timeline for athletics where the first 2 weeks are with limited hours and with limited contact in all sports. Mostly focused on conditioning, reconditioning, getting back into playing shape and so on, and some simple drills that are distanced. And then as of July 20th, they call it phase 2, where there's more hours and contact now allowed, still with daily screening. Athletes will all do the self-screening, as well as students who are here for summer school, and coaches will manage that. We'll have lots of increased cleaning procedures, distancing, and appropriate procedures in place for the weight room that are keeping people safe. And then once the school year starts, the expectation at this point is that competitions can begin, that we don't know exactly what that'll look like with spectators and concessions and things like that yet, but it looks like the goal is to be able to have contests with spectators on the regular IHSA schedule that's already been laid out. And of course, that'll adapt if we need to. But right now, that's the timeline that's been laid out that we're kind of ramp up to by starting on July 6th with just non-contact and conditioning in all sports, and then moving up from there. Okay, so there's my summary presentation. I'm going to unshare my screen here, and I'm going to start with some of the pre-submitted questions that I addressed some of them in the remarks that I just gave. So I won't address every pre-submitted question that came in, but I'm going to be able to answer a number of them here first, and then I'll turn to the Q&A that's come in live via Zoom. Give me just a sec to pull these up here. Okay, pre-submitted questions. One was, I know there was mention of a nurse being added to Brebeuf for the fall. Is there still conversation regarding that possibility? At this time, we are not planning to add a nurse on staff, although I would say it's always a possibility for us to consider as things develop. Currently, our plan, if anyone is showing symptoms in the building who's already here, we'll have a separate isolation room available for them. We'll have staff, our current staff who are trained to be able to respond and to help the student in that situation, and to take them through the screening protocol, which will also be linked to our self-screen protocol through Ascension St. Vincent, to immediately contact the parents and to inform them of the situation and the self-screen results and procedures and options from there. So I feel good, again, with the medical advice we're getting, that having the staff be able to handle that without the addition of a nurse will be sufficient for our needs. If that changes, if the advice that we get changes, or if the situation changes, we will certainly reconsider that, but that's the plan at this time. If a teacher needs to stay home, then what will happen in the class? That's a great question, and I mentioned our home learning platform. Our home learning platform for students means they can pipe into class. We are also then going to be able to utilize that for teachers from home to be able to pipe into class at times as well. And sometimes that'll be an easy, in some ways, way to do it, the right way to do it, and sometimes not. It'll depend on the situation, about what's happening in class that day, about what our options are for how we'll take care of that. When you think about working from home, the general guidance, everybody should be working from home as much as possible. Does that apply to teachers at all? Well, actually it can in some circumstances, I think. Colleges are preparing for that. We're preparing for that. So we're gonna do everything we can to keep our teachers who need to be home, again, with every incentive to be able to stay home when they need to, and to still stay connected with their classes and with their students, and even still teaching their students from home. I think we'll have pretty good ways to do that. So it'll be a mix of things, I'm sure, if the teacher's teaching from home, you'll still have another adult in the class with the students. So we'll make those plans and adaptations, and I don't, until we go through it and experience it, that's probably about the most I can say about it for now, but that is what we're planning for. If in August, Brebeuf starts with a partial in-school e-learning schedule, how long would that last? And what about when, if COVID cases are actively decreasing, or if there's a vaccine available, we'll be able to go back to school? This is a speculative question, but a good question about, that I think just brings home, I wanted to address it just to say that, I really do think that this plan that you have in front of us will be evolving on a regular basis. And, it'll probably be a number of things that change before we're back to school in August. And then once school starts, then there'll be things that'll adapt from there too. So we are just going to constantly be monitoring the data, the community transmission rates, the guidance from CDC and other public health officials from our medical task force. And if we were doing a partial school reopening of some kind where not all the students were in the building at the same time, then we would be always looking to reopen fully as soon as possible and safe. And vice versa. If we start out with everybody back in the building and it turns out from community transmission rates and from other guidance that's not the best thing, then maybe we would switch to more of a staggered schedule. So we're going to be flexible and adaptable. That's going to be our approach, with a hope to keep as many people able to be at school on a day-to-day basis as possible and as safe. Next question is related. If we did a hybrid schedule, I think this refers to the staggered, not everybody in school every day type schedule. If we did a hybrid schedule, how would sports practices work? So we've talked about this with, our usual policy is that if you're not in school, you can't come to sports in the afternoon. And that'll still be the case if you're sick. If you're not at school because you're sick or you're monitoring, then you can't come to sports practice in the afternoon. If you're not at school because we've told you can't be at school and you're doing the home learning platform from home because we're on a staggered schedule, then we'll probably make a different plan for that. You're participating in class from home because we can't have everybody in the building all at the same time, maybe. But that doesn't mean that we can't have the whole team at practice outside that same day. So it depends on the situation is the answer. Depends on what the reason for the hybrid schedule is, and the nature of the hybrid schedule, and the reason that you're needing to stay home and that you are staying home. And we will adapt all of our athletic policies with that in mind. Next question I got from 2 or 3 folks, and so I'll take one version of it. What is Brebeuf's approach to tuition payments or refunds if a school's approach doesn't meet the family's expectations or needs for in-person learning? So traditionally, we have said that we will, if you withdraw from Brebeuf by July 1st, that there's no financial penalty for that. We would like to be flexible and adaptable as possible, as all these things are changing so much. July 1st, certainly, if any of you are out there thinking right now, like, I think that we're going to need to make a change, and you make that by July 1st, there's not going to be any financial penalty for that, I can tell you for sure. Even beyond that, I think we're going to have to go with adapting for the situation. And, as things change significantly, to be as flexible with you as possible. So while I can't make any promises for that, we obviously want to do right by everybody. We want to make sure that you're in a place where you feel safe and comfortable, and not feel like there's a financial consideration that's like guiding you to make the wrong decision or anything like that. So that's how we'll approach it. And beyond that, July 1st is a significant date for us in the sense that I described. But even beyond that, I would say we will just try to work with you as best we can. If you're changing your minds about what you're able or comfortable with doing between July 1st and when school reopens, we're going to try to be as understanding about that as possible and work with you. Next is band and orchestra question. This is a valid question. Will band and orchestra students still have to wear masks even though the room is so big, depending on the number of students in there? At band and orchestra concerts, will students have to wear masks on stage while performing if they can play with a mask? that's a very valid question. And so band and orchestra and choir are challenging things to adapt. I can tell you that Mr. Lee, Mr. Tipple, Mr. Strader are all working hard on adapting stuff for the fall of how we can still have those classes. The students are still enrolled in those classes. We're still planning on them taking those classes and participating in those activities as much as they still want to. But of course, we've got to make them safe in a particular way for choirs to be able to do in a different way than usual. So anyway, for orchestra, yeah, I would expect that for non-wind instruments, that if we have a school mask policy in the building, that students who are playing a string instrument will still be in masks. Students who are playing a wind instrument, I bet we can adapt for if we're spaced out as much as possible, or even having rehearsals in different locations like outside, that there might be time that we say, okay, we're going to adapt the mask policy for the band students during their rehearsal time, if we can take other safety precautions that make that prudent. So we've got between now and August 13th to figure that out and to give band and orchestra students more information about that, but that's what I anticipate at this time. Will seniors still have the ability to leave campus? Great question. I do not know the answer. So seniors class of 2021, I would be prepared for either possibility. We are going to go with what is safe and prudent for us by the medical and scientific advice. It is definitely a possibility that we should be prepared for, that we have to say that once you're here, you can't leave and come back, depending on what we hear between now and August 13th. So, we certainly hope that we can have things as normal as possible in terms of the freedoms that students have of movement around the building and even on and off campus for seniors. But if it's not safe, it's not safe. And we're going to make the right decisions. We don't have to make them now, but we will make them before August 13th. Will students remain in the same cohort all day? Your reopening plans indicate that they'll be passing through classes, et cetera. That is tough in a high school. So I just want to speak to that for a minute. I was talking with some other principals about this recently, that, elementary school students are going to be able to stay in one classroom in the same cohort all day in many cases. Maybe the teachers rotate through and come to them if teachers are changing, as opposed to students. That's just not possible in a high school setting. Students are so mixed together with classes. So that's the reason that we need to really focus on the safe conditions within every classroom in passing periods, because students are going to be mixed with different groupings 6, 7 or more times a day for their classes and other activities, PRTs and things like that. We're going to work to make that as safe as possible, but I think it's realistic, and I think we should all be clear-eyed again about it, that when your student comes to school on a day-to-day basis, they will be in the same areas with dozens, if not hundreds of other kids in a given day. So how can you do that with as much risk mitigation as possible? That's something that we all should consider and think about, and we'll be able to have them keep, the CDC defines close contact right now as within 6 feet without masks for 15 minutes or more. With masks, it can be different. So that's one of the reasons that masks are important, because we know they won't be all within further than 6 feet. That 15 minutes is, it's a ballpark, right? So basically, I address this question to say, we have no way in a high school of cohorting students to make sure that they only interact with 20 other kids in a day. They're going to be interacting or in a building with several hundred other kids in a day. Whether we have 400 kids in the building at a time or 800 kids in the building at a time, that's going to be the case. So that's one of the challenges of running a high school in this environment, and I think one that we should be clear about and do the most risk mitigation that we can about. Okay, I am going to go to the live Q&A now. Like I said, I tried to address as many of those pre-submitted questions as possible, that combine some of them in what I just answered, as well as in the preliminary remarks. Okay, so I'm just seeing these for the first time, so I'll just be reading them aloud. I know you can't see them, and then we'll address them as we go. Okay, if my son or daughter is sick and I have them stay home, will they have the option of attending class online while they are at home? The answer is yes. That is what the home learning platform will be for. And I'm hopeful that they can keep doing the home learning platform for a period of time that's, up to and including 2 weeks, if that's what's necessary. That 14-day window is one that you commonly hear. Once we go beyond 14 weeks, I think it might be more complicated. It might be more difficult, to say I know some schools are looking at home learning platforms for an entire quarter, entire semester. That's not exactly what ours is going to be built for. I'll tell you that. I'm not saying that can't happen in any circumstance, But I think it's something that we're going to have to really carefully think through. And I will get back to you about that before August 13th, about different options and possibilities, like how long could I stay at home and do online learning successfully? I think that's a very valid question, and one that I don't know 100% the answer to yet. Our platform is especially going to be built for staying home for up to 2 weeks, but beyond 2 weeks is a slightly different question. What about masks for indoor sports such as basketball? Will they have to be masked during workouts in the gym? The guidance that we've received at this time is that masks during heavy aerobic activity or other activities, physical activities where students are having to get heart rates up, to breathe heavily and so on, sweat a lot, are ones where they shouldn't be wearing masks. They should be distanced instead. So that's a balance we've got to strike for indoor sports. So the quick answer is no. I don't expect that once we get into basketball workouts and basketball practices, especially in phase 2 and 3 by the IHSA, they won't be wearing masks while they play basketball. And they won't be wearing masks while they're on the treadmill in the wellness center, and they won't be wearing masks while they're in certain other physical activities in the gym and wellness center space, including things that they might do in PE or things that they might do for their sports. When they're doing those things, we're still going to be careful about distancing them as much as possible. And which again is, you're talking about basketball, that's not really possible. So basketball is one of those examples of a contact sport that's a voluntary activity that if you're comfortable with your child doing that, that's what they'll be doing. And if you're not, then that is perfectly understandable. And then for things like PE that are more part of the required curriculum, we're going to be sure to have them distanced. There's not going to be contact without masks for sure, but really contact at all in our PE curriculum. So when they're inside, they will have masks or not, depending on the nature of the activity as a physical activity. And that's how we'll guide them in that. Let's see, a few other questions on the live Q&A that have already been addressed. How will the visitor restrictions affect parents visiting the Spirit Store? We will have provisions to allow parents to still visit the Spirit Store during this time. So I think I talked a little bit about visitor policy, about still having availability for visitors. And I said you'll need to have an appointment, but that's a little different for the Spirit Store. So let us get back to you about specifics about that. We'll definitely make that possible. I know Ms. Rawls runs the Spirit Store. She's here today getting the Spirit Store prepared. So I know we'll have a provision for that. I don't know the details of it yet, but that will be possible. Will retreats still occur? Great question. The answer is yes. And in what form, we don't know. So I would expect that in September, we're not going to be having overnight retreats, I'm guessing. That's my expectation now. And I know that our campus ministry staff is actively planning for for retreats that are happening in alternative ways. So we'll see. I mean, the possibility of having people stay overnight in individual rooms, which is how it generally is anyway, might be possible once we get into down the road. We're going to be guided by that and make our plans based on that. I don't know the answer yet, but we will still have spiritual opportunities, including retreats, available for students one way or the other. They'll probably look different than they do now, and I don't know if they'll be overnight or not, but we're still going to have that opportunity, that growth for students. How will teachers be well heard and understood when wearing a mask, especially for the kids in the back of the room and listening online? Can they use a face shield only to allow for the mouth to be seen and improve understanding? Good question. I addressed this briefly when I said the masks will be difficult in the classroom setting, and we'll all have to get used to it and adapt. So what my understanding is currently is that a face shield alone is not a substitute for what a mask provides in terms of protection. The face shield can be an extra layer of protection on top of a mask, and I think that's how we're going to treat them. So unfortunately, I was hoping for that too when I heard, when I started learning about face shields, that maybe I could get better facial recognition. But it looks like, at least for July, certainly, what we're going to be telling people is you still have to have a mask, and if you want to have a face shield on top of that, that's fine, but you do have to have a mask. So in answer to your question, I think every teacher is worried about this, about how just in the classroom on a daily basis, with them being in a mask and students being in a mask, how we're going to be able to understand each other as well, to have facial, just the way that all of our brains work for how facial communication happens. We're all going to adapt to this. And I think we're going to be patient with each other. We're going to work hard at it, and we're going to make it work. So that's what's going to happen in July. I think we'll learn a lot from that, and then we'll be better prepared for how it happens in August too.
Greg, can I add something on the Spirit Store? Just
Sure.
that part of the Spirit Store now be online, and also for the first couple of months, people will be able to make appointments to come into the Spirit Store.
Oh, great, thanks. Okay. How will distancing affect other activities such as robotics? I think that falls into the category. I talked about the freshman DigSit class, same as art, visual arts activities. We will be adapting all those things. I can't tell you for sure whether robotics will still be much different than it is now, whether it will be able to happen. I think, for instance, I briefly mentioned our makerspace with JD Ferris Road the other day. He doesn't anticipate we'll be able to have the makerspace open as school starts because there's just so much sharing, hands-on sharing of stuff that happens in that space. We'll certainly have to significantly adapt it if we are going to have the makerspace open. So robotics falls into the category of one of those things where you use shared materials quite a bit usually, where we're going to need to adapt for this circumstance. It's kind of like science labs. Just talking with one of our science teachers yesterday about this, about kind of redoing and rethinking, going through every one of their labs and thinking, is this lab still possible in this setting? What labs are possible? I think we'll still have a lot of hands-on emphasis in science, and we might be changing up the way that the groups happen and the way that the materials are used. Other materials around the classrooms, things like pens and markers and even scissors when you think about activities where they're doing cutting of stuff. And I know it's more an elementary school thing, but occasionally in a high school classroom, you utilize that stuff. We got to think about all those things too. So it is a daily consideration for our teachers right now in making their plans. And I think that students who are involved in those activities and those classes will see the plans clearly when they come back in July for summer school, even more so in August. This is a question about these meetings. Will they always be in the same time of the day? We can be happy to shift these meetings around. Remember that they are all recorded, and then you can get them on our YouTube page. So if you're just tuning in, if you missed something at the beginning, this will be on our YouTube page in full, and you can watch the entire hour at your convenience. And I know you can't ask live questions in that circumstance, but you can pre-submit your questions still through our Q&A pre-submission form. Will there be potentially assigned areas for common areas as well? This is a possibility. So in one of our thoughts about building management, once we come back in the fall, will we have the ability to have just as much freedom as they usually have to, basically go wherever they want to go during their PRTs? I don't know the answer to that yet. I think it's very possible that we might take groupings of students and say, these are the students who have access to this common area at this time, and be trying to spread students out that way. Or we might just work it by just, cutting it off at a certain capacity. So it's very possible, it's part of the potential plan that we might assign students a little more than we usually do during their free periods to certain parts of the building and others to other parts of the building to try to keep the grouping, the bunching again down compared to usual. That's really more a question for the fall and then for July, because in July, that's not going to be an issue. Speaking of that, I haven't actually addressed the survey that you take addresses this. As everybody's probably aware, the most likely scenarios for schools at this point, when you come back in August, is either everybody's back in school at the same time and you have lots of distancing and safety protocols in place, or you split the school basically in half to reduce capacity significantly, and then have some students come on some days and then the rest of the students come on other days and swap out. A staggered approach or a hybrid approach, that's often called. I've been referring to it several times as people have been asking questions about it here. I don't know which of those we're doing yet. I really don't. I think that I would lean right now towards, if you had to tell me, if I had to say today, I would lean towards a full reopening based on the guidance that we're getting, that will be a sufficient amount of risk reduction for us to be able to do that safely. But again, I'm going to let the process and the changes and what we see take place in the next month and a half make that decision for us. Obviously, we'll need to make that decision before the first day of school, well before the first day of school. So I'd expect, again, probably the next time that we do this kind of thing in July, that I'll be able to tell you more with more certainty what we're doing. But right now, again, we're leaning towards a full reopening in August. But there's certainly the possibility that we would do the half and half kind of approach as well. And if we did that, I haven't sketched out a schedule for it yet. What you hear schools mostly talking about is some sort of kind of block type schedule where we have an 8-period schedule. So you might have 4 classes one day, 4 classes the next day, like the maroon and gold thing that we did in the spring. And so half the school comes for those 2 days, and then you switch. And then for the next 2 days, the rest of the school comes and those students then stay home. And when they're at home, again, that home learning platform that we're setting up, this is another benefit of the piping the classroom, streaming at home to students at home, that they would be able to still participate in class. You wouldn't have to have just 2 days and then stop, and then 2 days. You'd still be participating from home in the live class that's happening in school. So that could be a big benefit of that system if that's what needs to happen. And again, I would expect to know that for sure, certainly by a month from now, if not earlier. But right now we are leaning towards a full reopening with anybody who is well enough and comfortable enough with being here, being able to be here on day one. Let's see. Will there be exceptions for mask wearing for students with health issues like anxiety, claustrophobia, asthma, respiratory issues, etc.? I don't think that that's going to be possible. Dr. Doehring, do you have any perspective on this? Anything to share about that at this time?
Yeah, masking is pretty well established as one of the ways that we can help decrease risk for the entire school community. So obviously no one really enjoys wearing a mask all day. They're uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. It's not normal, but there is public health evidence that it's helpful for keeping people who are asymptomatic, in other words, people who feel well but may happen to have the virus and not realizing it, keeping those people from transmitting it to other nearby people. So I think the combination that Mr. VanSlambrook has outlined with, first of all, stay at home if you're sick, because obviously coughing and sneezing is even more risky. Secondly, wearing the masks to decrease the chances of you inadvertently transmitting the virus to someone nearby. The physical distancing piece, again, adding that space so that hopefully the virus won't be transmitted as easily. And then finally, the hand sanitization and sanitization of the building, which we haven't really talked about a lot yet. Obviously, that's another key component. So when you combine all of those things together, we feel that that really helps decrease the overall risk to the entire community. And that's important because, as most of you know, you may have family members or friends that are at higher risk for complications if they were to get infected with this virus. And so all of us want to protect those vulnerable people in our community, and I think those 4 ways are the best way to do that.
Thank you, Marla. Okay, one thing to add to that, I'm sorry, if you're in that situation, and I've already had one person contact me about the asthma issue, I will get specific medical advice on that. I will recommend that everybody get specific medical advice on that from their personal doctors as well. And we'll do the best we can to adapt to make sure that your student can be in school as much as possible, even with the mask policy. So, there might be opportunities to say, like, do they just need to get an outside break in between each class, or are there things that we can do to still make that possible for them? We will work to try to make that happen for you. I just don't anticipate that we would be able to make exceptions if we're in a mask policy for all the reasons that we've already addressed.
The other thing I might add is this would probably be a good time this summer while your child is home to maybe try different types of masks. Some different materials feel better to some people than others. Some people prefer ties versus ear loops. There's a huge variety of masks that are available. And the masking document that was attached to the reopening plan actually gives really good guidance for what would be considered acceptable. And there's quite a wide range of what would be acceptable. So maybe have your student try some different things and see what might work best for them.
Thank you. All right, will the same requirements for community service be upheld? Our community service director, Nick Klingler, is basically working really hard with all of our community service agencies, our partner agencies. We do have community service classes happening right now with some students that placed on site and then doing the class part online. So we're gonna probably have to make adjustments to community service offerings based on what's available out there, although more and more places are opening back up to our students doing community service on their sites. So we're gonna let that guide us, and if we need to make that adjustment to student schedules, their counselors and Mr. Klingler will work with them to shift it to a later time if that's possible, or adapt it if they're a senior and they need to get it done this year and we need to adapt the situation for them, we will do that. How many students are in PE in each session? In the July term, there are about 100 students in the morning session. So we've got them broken up into, I forget, 4 or 5 groups. And again, all outside, each with their own teacher or teachers. So there's a decent sized group in the morning, and then in the afternoon, it's quite a bit less. I think it's 50 or 60. So when you consider our whole campus, both outside and sometimes inside in the wellness center, workout areas when they're inside or during rain and things like that, we've got plenty of space for that number of students. How long will these protocols last? Until the curve is flattened or until the virus is gone? Great question, and we are going to go with it and take the advice as it goes. And I can't tell you. We're going to keep doing it until we don't need to anymore, right? Let's see. Is there consideration for shortening the school calendar by removing off days or break days, such as fall break or spring break, like colleges are doing? We have not decided to do that at this time. We will consider that if that becomes a thing that is beneficial for risk mitigation. We would definitely consider that strongly. But at this time, we have not made any changes to our breaks calendar with the uncertainty of how far away that is, of how helpful that would be. I think we will consider it as we go. But for right now, fall break, Thanksgiving break, winter break are all still on the calendar as usual, and we'll take it as it comes. Can you please give tutorials on proper mask wearing techniques? So many people are wearing masks over their mouths and not their noses. I know what you mean. So this is a good question because it also brings up the opportunity to talk about our teachers in summer school, for instance. So the week before summer school starts, our teachers will all be doing training sessions with school leadership as well as members of our medical task force on guiding students on day 1 and beyond. So our teachers will be doing a lot with students to guide them on all sorts of safety issues, including how to wear a mask, how to take care of their masks. So yes, for sure, we will be doing that on a regular basis with students in class regularly. They'll probably get sick of us talking about it. I like the at-home platform. This could be a good idea for continuing labs. Also, would wearing gloves help in this area and other activities for more hands-on functions. We don't have gloves written into our policy in any place right now. We'll take that, again, case by case and situation by situation. There might be times when I was just talking with our athletics staff this morning about people wearing gloves in the concession stands, food service, and things like that. So we'll put gloves into the mix when we need to. Right now, it's not I've not heard it to be enough of a benefit inside to be something that we would ask of everybody or of all students or yet in particular situations that we'll be in July. So right now, I don't have any plans to have requirements of gloves, but if it's helpful, we'll definitely adopt that. And we can get a supply of gloves here or have people bring their own or a mix, just like we're doing with masks. Okay, we are coming up against our time. So I'm just going to thank everybody for being a part of this today, for your participation, for your time, especially for your openness, for your encouragement. I've had many of you reach out to me with just notes of encouragement for all the work that's happening, and I really appreciate that. It is really it's a situation that is challenging for all of us to deal with, and I know that everybody has their own individual challenges with it. So, I just I'm appreciative of what everybody is going through, and have empathy for each other, and I have we're just showing a lot of empathy and compassion around our community. I think that's one of the things that our community needs to be doing, and is in a good place to be doing right now, and will be going into the fall. So thank you very much. I'm going to see if Father Bill or Dr. Doehring want to say any other closing remarks before we close it out.
I just want to thank everyone for participating, especially for Greg for all your work, and for Dr. Doehring for you and the work of the medical task force. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. God bless you. And we'll see many of you in July. Looking forward to it. Take care.
Thank you.